they call it the Igbo area of Nigeria. They say there's no place called Igbo. They have states. And Abia State is the foremost state in the eastern part. They too want to establish manufacturing processing zones within this zone here. In other words, around the world, Istanbul, Chicago, like I said, South Africa, there are so many things that are now able to come to Nigeria and Abia State because the time is right. Public-private partnership can only be done when you have a credible partner in a credible governor. And it is now that we have the governor and we have the government in place that we can now design those type of things. Do you know what will happen by the time you now have one or two major industries that come? Other smaller industries follow them. Mr. Leo, who I'm talking to in Guangzhou, he's setting up the maintenance plant to maintain water bottle lines because you produce water every day, correct? But how do you maintain it? So they're going to want to manufacture it here and maintain it here. Now they come with their own suppliers. They employ Nigerians and they will employ Abia people. The bottom line is that public-private partnership and the OPS will work with government to work out a situation whereby these PPPs can now become an effective, calculable and evident way of development and deliverables. And sir, one thing I can promise you, as you know, that it is now that we're now going to find a way to start working to bring these things home, to help in employment, revenue generation, and expansion of our abilities in Abia State. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Uche. Our next speaker, His Excellency, has already started taking some of those steps that you just mentioned. And I stand before you this afternoon to talk about a new Abia program, empowering Abia businesses for global market through an export. Let me say, the problem that we have in Nigeria today, which is still here with us, the devaluation of Naira started back in 2014. The bad news is that it hasn't ended. And it will not end even by 2030 and beyond unless we take a different approach. That approach is growing our industrial base and also focusing on export. The root cause of the devaluation, the more dollars we bring in, the less we devalue. We still need dollars for our capital product goods, so we can't run away from it. If you go to the next slide, the good news as well is that we are not doing something that others have not done before. Where Nigeria is today, Indonesia was in around 1999 when their oil almost ran out, they became a net importer. Vietnam, when the war ended, and they had to grow their economy. Singapore, when they realized a small nation, but they had to use what they have around them. Singapore today, as we know, I don't need to talk about them, we know how big they are. So that is, and you can see their annual GDP growth rate. This was between 1991 and 2002. The difference between Nigeria and these countries is that our export remains very low. Now go to the next slide, very quickly. It is also clear, and this is not my study, these are studies by World Bank and others. For every 1% growth in GDP, you increase your tax growth by about 1.5% or 2%. Both corporate tax, income tax grows even more. Income gain, economic output, the jobs, at least 2 to 8 new jobs per $1 million increase in export. Let's go to the next slide, please. For these countries, it was deliberate. The export market is harder. It is competitive. Yeah, and these countries actually took very deliberate steps. Some of these steps The policy steps and the reforms are already ongoing, the infrastructure that is also ongoing, and they had a strategy and objective of where they want to go. Go to the next slide. Just 2 minutes. The other part, and which is where the Export Growth Lab comes in, is that they supported businesses. What you see here is a study from OECD. The 4 touch points that countries, states, touch when they want to grow export: information, contact, competitiveness, and managerial capacity. These are all coming together. Next slide. In the Growth Lab, go to the next slide. So in the Growth Lab, in the pilot phase over the next 6 months, we are going to take 20 Abia-based businesses and work with them to develop their strategy, work with them to understand what it takes to play in the international market. Our target, you go to the next slide, our target is at the end of the 6 months, not only would they have understood the rudiments of international trade, they would have a strategy to get into the market. And we would have taken their products on market trial in at least 1 African country and 1 European country. We've started on the 11th and 12th of December. We will start an opportunity framing workshop. What does Abia want to achieve? We need to be deliberate. We will start at the government side to say, from the government side, what do you want to see? And then we will also come. I'm already in touch with the president of Abia Chamber of Commerce, and we will take the businesses in Abia. What does the opportunity look like? This will form the framework that we will present to you, Governor, and say, this is the roadmap that we want to pursue as part of the Export Growth Lab. And we will work on an ongoing basis over the next 6 months to actually learn. It is a pilot project, but at the end of 6 months, we will come back and tell you, this is how far we've gone, this is what we've achieved, these are the lessons that we've learned, and then this is stage 2. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
I'm happy with what the previous speakers have said. We have a governor that is ready to take action. So I was given a tough challenge. Abia state of limitless opportunities. But then look at what you see in red: challenges and prospects for all stakeholders. Let's go to the next slide. About me, next slide. You can, if you have the brochures, I think on page 19, you have my profile, you can read about it. Okay, so the question is, for everybody, including your excellency, sir, what do you see? And at the bottom, I said there are no right or wrong answers. So while you are thinking on that question, it's a rhetorical question, I want you to play me that video, and then we come back, the 1-minute video. Okay, I hope he gets the opportunity to play it. But let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Again, if you had listened to the video, the woman said, what we consider challenge, it's a function of our experiences, our education, our exposure. So what is challenge for one person might be opportunity for another, and vice versa. And then just go back to my slide. So for me, when I was given the task, I asked the people who extended the invitation to me is, what is the goal that you are trying to achieve? It is always important to begin with the end in mind. And so I asked 3 questions. How do we measure the success of today's event? What needs to happen for the organizers of this event to say this was a successful program? And then what would be the takeaway? At least 1, 2, 3 things that we can do. Next slide. I don't need to talk about all of this. Of course, challenges, we know them. I don't like to talk about this. These are the challenges we all know, and all of us can agree with me that you can explain each of these, but this is not the challenge that I'm focusing on. Go to the next slide. These are the three challenges that we ignore, or sometimes out of ignorance we don't think about them. The loss of an heritage, the loss of vision, the loss of values. And I can tell you guys are familiar with the pictures. The first is King Jaja of Opobo, whose heritage is from this state. The other is Jaja Wachuku, the very first speaker of Nigerian's House of Representatives. And we have Professor Nubisi Ekeke, incidentally, who happens to be a part of the board, Abia board of diaspora communities. All of these things and the resilient spirit of the Abia women that we know. This generation seems to be losing this, and we need to bring them back. But much more than that, there has to be a vision that drives all of this in a coordinated way that helps us to achieve what we have set out to achieve. And then finally, we know that before now you can import things from Taiwan and they say it's Taiwan quality. Abia should not do that. When people were coming, people were saying they were having disclaimers. We don't want to touch a product because they are not verifiable. So what does values do? They help to guide our paths, guide our hearts to do right, as well as to help evaluate where we are and where we want to go wrong. Next slide, please. These are opportunities, we know them. This is not where I'm going to. Next slide, please. And it's interesting that the very first thing I put on my slide on opportunities is what we are dealing with now. The issue of time and order. We do not have time. We don't have 100 years to rebuild Abia. We don't have that time. But closely related to the issue of time is order. You can't get anything done without time and order. Again, the other thing is unlimited resources. Of course, there are opportunities, we have them. But what I'm talking about is the lifestyle that helps to drive the vision. And finally, again, Abia is now on a mission. A mission to restore the glory of Abia State, to make Abia State a travel destination in Nigerian opportunities, human welfare, and progress. Next slide, please. Okay, please permit me to just stay here for maybe 1 minute. How can Abia truly make a difference? See my answer. Be like the ants. It is interesting that the smallest of God's creation has to be its greatest teacher. And the lessons we can see from the ants, I use the word analogy, is that we should cultivate the attitude of initiative, the nature of integrity, the test for industry. All of these things are resident already in Abia. Next slide. Next slide. And then practical ways for the Abian ants to thrive. And permit me, everyone, please watch. I asked initially, what are the 3 to 5 things that we can do? Your Excellency, sir, if we can identify 1, 2, 3 of all of these things I've identified and work on them, in 3 years guaranteed, Abia will be the travel, the business hub for Africa. What are those 3 things? I said, identify a cashew nut hub, develop an entrepreneurship center in that area, or identify the rubber research hub. And I'm putting the areas where you could do them. You don't need to take all of them so that you're not overwhelmed. We don't have the time. All the palm products that is littered all over Abia State. This is what can transform Abia. But then, what are the accelerators? Like I said, if you want to do this in 3 years, strategic communication, whose duty is it to sell Abia State? Whose duty is it? And then database activation. Earlier when they were talking about people talking about their products, usage and export. Encourage local usage of all and so much more of all those products, as well as export them, and the opportunities are there. I will come to that. And then value addition. We can't keep wasting our raw resources. I don't have all the time to dig deep into this. And then Abia multipurpose factories. Dr. Marisa talked about that. I don't have that time. But I would have loved to, but I don't have that time. And then differentiation mechanism. Your Excellency, sir, people take shoes from Yenga products. But what are the success stories and the things that we can do to turn all of these things around? One, there are hidden companies even here in Abia State that are currently doing these things. They are currently doing them. But that's not where I want to talk about. In trading, the Igbo man is a traditional trader. But today, he needs dollar to import. We can sell all of these and much more, gain FS to import our thing and have more to loan to federal government.
Thank you very much.
I don't know, just to the next slide, let me see if there's anything. Okay, so it's my conclusion. So what's my conclusion? The role of vision. You have a visionary leader in Dr. Alex Oti. So there's no issue about that already. And then monetizing our resources. I've already talked about that. Abia is the answer. Someone will ask me how. I've already given you some. You export, use the produce to import, you lend to federal government. And how do we do this? I talked about who is selling the story of Abia. Strategic communication. And I end with an African proverb. It says, until the lion learns to write, every story will always glorify the hunter. Between being a hopeless continent and an Africa rising, there are complex stories yet to be captured, and Abia State owned is one of them. Thank you, Your Excellency.